Exercise Delicious is one of the best, if not the best, poster on my subreddit. He puts my efforts to shame. Now, look what he's come up with. Women are the ultimate drivers of imperialism and colonialism, which I agree, right? Because women, women's hypergamy and deselection of men causes men to try and gain wealth any way they can. And what it does, it ends up taking the form of cannibalizing other men from other cultures, right? That's the biggest driver of war, after starvation or something like that, right? The fight for resources comes survival first and then getting laid second. But the first is very rare now in our technological world. So it's almost entirely driven by the second now. I've been working on a two-part post for a bit to try my best to summarize why the idea that women are colonizers is an extremely understudied point. Of course, it's understudied because guys aren't aware of it. It's like studying the air. It's all around you. And it's invisible. You don't even notice it, right? Now look at this. Deselected sovereign, the white mogul era. Colonialism didn't start with prestige, it started with survival. Younger sons deselected by British law of primogeniture. That's, by the way, the firstborn male gets everything. And the younger sons have to survive on their own. They fled to a valueless life in England to find a social reset in India. Social reset. In other words, they become somebody. Colonialism was literally started by women refusing to get with landless men. Sound familiar? Doesn't make colonialism okay, but understanding who drives it to this day is important. That's right. That's right. To this day, right? Women's hypergamy and deselection let them match. Now, the integration, this is important too. On top of companionship with Indian women, these men found sovereignty by going native. They adopted Mogul dress, language, and families because they saw India as superior civilization, not a subject to be ruled. Well, they admired the civilization that was there, but it was superior because they were accepted. Let's face it, they found success, right? These white moguls became a wealthy, independent political force that threatened the rigid power structures of London. You're right, exactly. So these white guys actually respected these countries and integrated with them, right? So London had to put a stop to that. The establishment's emergency brake. London and the gatekeeper class of British women viewed this integration as a loss of control. Well, it was, right? They enacted a social and legal divorce to tether these valuable men back to the crown. See, once these men, they were valueless as, second and third born sons, but they went and they gained wealth, so now they're valuable, right? Never as human beings, never as themselves. The Cornwallis Code, a literal apartheid law, it barred Anglo-Indians, mixed race children, from power, forcing British men to choose your Indian family or your career. Right? And there's no point in having an Indian family if you don't have career, right? If you don't have status. The fishing fleet pivot. Spinsters who had previously deselected these men in England arrived as memsahibs to reclaim that wealth. They didn't just bring tea, they brought de-integration. In other words, when women ditch a man, you have to stay ditched. And you see this in the modern era right here. When women ditch their man and their man goes and gets another new wife, the woman gets pissed off. It's like, you're supposed to suffer, right? Now, the manufacturing of the administrator. When the gatekeepers refused to allow men to be integrated, they forced them to become brutes. The psychopathic engine, by forcing men to abandon their genuine domestic happiness. See, society does not run or desire male happiness, right? Their Indian families, for the sake of British purity, the Raj created a generation of detached, cold rulers. Right? Again, these British families, these guys know, or I should say the Indian families they integrated into, these guys know they can't keep if they lose their status. Their Indian women would abandon them because hypergamy is universal. British women codified prestige to keep their husbands away from the bibis. They built the bungalow and the club, physical manifestations of domestic apartheid that pathologized empathy, right? The women came and said, we don't want our men scuttling off to these Indian women with their extra wealth, right? You know, that hurts our feelings. And we want power over these men. So we're going to come in and gear things up differently. Now, the harvest man-made catastrophes. This is interesting, which I didn't know. The social divorce from India led directly to the death of millions. When the administrators stopped seeing India as a home and started seeing it as a ledger, the result was indifference. So the famines from Bengal, 1770 to Madras, 1876, the administrators prioritized market purity and exports, while an estimated 20, 30 million people starved to death, right? Because the white guys in charge, their motivation became not being a part of the Indian culture, but draining it dry, right? To satisfy their white mistresses. Imperial feminism. Okay, this is painful. Figures like Flora Annie Steele used the victimization of Indian women. See, they starved these Indian women, but they used them as victims, right? Feminism is about destroying men, and they will harm women to do it. As a moral wedge to justify racial hierarchy. They saved Indian women while simultaneously creating a racist environment leading to racist laws, including the Criminal Tribes Act, right? Now, I want to go to the second part because he talks about these famines. Thank you again, Exercise Delicious. Women in colonialism, how the arrival of women in steamships popularized and necessitated the employment of Malthusian theory, that is eugenics. See, these women came by, these white girls, and they were not going to compete with Indian women. Indian women, by the way, are no better than white women. It's just that they were poorer than the white women, and they were willing to shack up with white men. But white women weren't having that, right? Now, there were several great famines in India. For brevity, I'm going to split them between the India starting getting taxed in 1765 versus after, right? Basically saying when men were integrated to when the apartheid came along, right? Now, look at this. From 1344 to 1345, Sultan Muhammad provided interest-free loans, and moved the capital to ensure food supply. The nature of the famine was extreme drought. But notice what he did. This is someone who cared about the populace. Here's in other words, Emperor Akbar began a system of state granaries and soup kitchens. No, Shah Jahan canceled 70% of taxes and opened free kitchens in every major city. Do you see what's going on? These leaders are looking after their people when drought came along or crop failures. Now let's look at after 1765, right? Great Bengal famine. They increased taxes 10% during the drought to guarantee 12.5 dividend to London stockbrokers. See, the guys don't give a shit about the people now. They're a resource to be consumed, right? And notice all these companies, these stockholders, it's all female driven, right? The white guys at home want to keep their women around. And so these Indian people have to starve. Let's see. I'm losing my ability to speak. Charlisa famine. They dismantled traditional village grain storage systems to reduce administrative cost. Hey, you're costing us money looking after these people, right? I'm not going to go through them all. Notice that even when within the post-1765 famines, that there appear to be more famines happening in the 1800s. Yeah, you notice it is bigger. See, this list, there's only 4. This is what, 6 or 7? Right. Now, frequency aside, it's additionally undeniable that famines posted, the Great Bengal famine, started to get rationalized around the mid-1800s as a result of social Darwinism, that is eugenics. It went along the lines of equating Indian lives to that of cockroaches, and that them dying due to famine was simply due to their Indian breeding. Again, guys, notice when these passport bros, these white guys that couldn't make it in England, integrated into their society, into Indian society, they took care of them. But once the white women came in, swooped in and said, no, you're not going to enjoy happiness when I can have a bigger purse or a bigger hat. That's when they turned into people that just drained India dry, right? Now, Malthusian theory got popularized only after the invention of the steamship. Why? Right? This is because once steamships got created, the travel time to India and various other colonies, such as the following, became easier. I think he meant to say at the end. Easier and quicker. It's not just quicker, it's easier. Men are the explorers. We're the ones who have to survive the elements and sleep rough and live off cabbage. The women only show up once it's something they can bring their luggage to, right? Steamship gave women access to colonies. There you go. Travel time substantially decreased, allowing women en masse join men to the assured comfort of ship travel in colonizing the land. Ship comfort. There you go. I think it's more than just the quickness. I think it's the comfort level that's important, right? I believe it is no coincidence that it is only following that famines became more frequent and the eugenics nationalization of famine sprouted up. This further substantiated by feminist rhetoric. See, this hate movement is always on the go, right? This is what everyone claims is good, this evil movement, right? But the feminist rhetoric that was employed by characters like Floria Steele, who literally opposed Indians' right to vote while fighting for her own right to vote in the exact same time in London. Now, again, it's not a right for her, it's a privilege. It's a right for the Indian men who have to work for their country. It's a privilege for her, right? She was literally quoting feminist reasoning to withhold men's rights to vote in India. Think about that. Some scholars making sure not to necessarily name the characters individually, lest they stop being celebrated as feminist figures today, do acknowledge this to be imperial feminism. Make no mistake, that is just feminism. Thank you. Thank you, Delicious. Exactly. They're always trying to say, here's this regular feminism that's all good. And whenever every time something goes tits up and proves them wrong, they just take it out and they put it somewhere else and say, here's the bad feminists, or they're not the real feminists. The same old bullshit. Now, while the early famines in the 1700s were driven by the greed of a private company, the later famines were fueled by the needs of colonial domestic class. Yeah, the women were there and uh, they wanted not just privileges and prestige, right? I'm forgetting the proper word, but they wanted to be treated like queens, right? That takes do re mi. That means the general population of India has to suffer. The requirement to provide a comfortable segregated life for British women, segregated, like women didn't want to be lumped in with they don't integrate. They don't want to be lumped in with these lessers. The men were willing to integrate. If an Indian woman said yes to a man, he says, I'm Indian now. But women are like, no, I am my own thing and everything serves me. The requirement to provide a comfortable, segregated life for British women turned the colonial government into a machine that prioritized European home over Indian survival. There you go. As the distance between consumer colonial domestic class of women and the Indian slave class they were exploiting shrank, in other words, they're right there on the doorstep, eugenics and feminist reasoning exploded. Yeah, the hate movement exploded, right? In an effort to explain the direct theft of goods from India under broad daylight to the hands of consumer women, this is, I hope, reminiscent of the deflective manner in which women have essentially always obfuscated responsibility and maintain mental distance from their victims as they extract from them. Now, this is very important from Delicious here, right? That's these women normally didn't have to ever get their hands dirty. You could always blame men. It's my son who, wasn't going to get laid, who ran to this other country and stole from them. It wasn't due to me, but once these women show up at the doorstep, they get engaged politically. They bring out the feminist hate movement rhetoric, and they do get their hands dirty. And that's why historically, that gets wiped clean. They don't mention these women. Anyway, a deep thanks to you, Exercise Delicious, for this fantastic post, the both of them. And I hope guys are willing to watch this entire video. I know some videos are so much more entertaining, but this is so much more important.